We're at 7. Why don't we get started? I'm going to call the meeting to order, and let's do a pledge of allegiance. Thank you all. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you all. Let me do a roll call. I see Molly, Jeff, Amber, Lee, Paloma, Pam, Dan. So I think we have full house today. I see the city administrator. Who do we have online with the city?
Good evening, Mayor and council members. Nick Ward Willis with Keenan Bean, City Attorney.
Okay. Thank you, Nick. Got it. Okay, so let's do public comment. Are you all, the group that's here, are you okay to wait just a little while? It's okay? All right, so we'll do public comment first, but I will move the proclamation ahead of the public hearing if the council is okay with that. All right? So let's do public comment. This is the first opportunity for public comment. I've got a list here that people have signed up. If you haven't, you can come after that, and then after we do the people in the room, we can do anyone who might be online. You've got any topic you want except the public hearing. There's a public hearing this evening on minimum parking requirements. You'll have an opportunity to speak on that as well if you wish, but don't do it in the first opportunity, okay? So with that, I've got, Arthur, you're signed up for parking. So the first person signed up for a general comment is Clark Gebman. Clark?
Clark Gebman, 2 Wilson Street. Today's a big day for our country, right? Where accountability comes to the minds of Americans and their leadership and the kind of government that we embrace or aspire to. I'd like to return to a common theme of government accountability in the city of Beacon and the steps that the council take to hide the issues of accountability under the umbrella of a city manager, and thus relieve yourselves individually for management policies of the city. And the former city government before Lee and Charlie steered us to this kind of government, in, I guess the early to mid 90s rather, was the department heads had a bigger role. And I'm not suggesting that, but what I am suggesting is the more pressures that come upon the city from big real estate interest, the more important it is for the city to individually be accountable to your neighbors through the council. And feigning ignorance on the key issues of the day works in terms of the continuum of government that isn't really truly accountable to the people. And so it works for a passive getting along, getting reelected, but it doesn't work for the more ideal standard of true knowledge and accountability as to the needs of the residents of the city. And if affordable housing is a goal, then it can't happen as a progressive community without progressive management of the alternatives presented
15 seconds.
to the council. And so I return to the shielding of accountability through the management of the city manager is impractical in a community where real estate
time
demand
is
is so
elapsed.
high.
Thank you. The other person on the list that wants, oh, there isn't anyone else on the list that wants to make a general comment. Anyone in the room would like to make a general comment as opposed to one regarding parking? Okay, sure.
Teresa Kraft, Ward 3. It seems that the recent resolution that you passed didn't quite work out as you planned. Now more of the taxpayer resources are being spent on trying to control the traffic on the impassable Route 9D corridor. Unfortunately, this is causing problems for a wider circle of residents who are struggling to go about their daily routines. If you had to cross the bridge for work or to go to the hospital today, then you were at the mercy of the traffic situation. It appears that your luck is running out. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else, again, want to make a general comment other than the public hearing on parking? Seeing none. Ben, anyone online want to make a general comment not on parking?
If you're on Zoom and you'd like to make a public comment, you'll need to use the raise hand option. If you're joining us by phone, you'll need to press *9. And if you're tuning in by YouTube, you will need to join the Zoom by visiting beaconny.gov. As of now, we have no hands raised on Zoom.
Okay. Would the council indulge a motion to alter the agenda to move the proclamation of April as Child Abuse Prevention Awareness Month up ahead of the public hearing?
Motion.
Second.
All right, so that was Molly and Dan. Is non-discussable. All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. I appreciate it. So with that, let me do a proclamation. I have a couple of people here that I met over the weekend and did a photo event at this really pretty blue pinwheels in front of Libby Funeral Home. I also just want to acknowledge the presence of not only the former judge, Peter Foreman, but I had the great honor of being on the council when Peter was the city attorney, which he did for, well, I don't know, did you do it for 10 years? Yeah, so 9. So it's just nice to have you in the room. So let me do a proclamation. Should I do, we'll do a photo op afterwards, is that all right? All right, so let me read it. So in recognition of Child Abuse Prevention Awareness Month, whereas children represent the future of our community and nation, and it is paramount that all of us work to ensure that children receive the love, support, and care they need for their healthy growth and are protected from abuse, exploitation, and neglect in all forms. And whereas the research shows that strengthening and supporting families by building protective factors, nurturing and attachment, knowledge of parenting and child development, social connections, parental resilience, social and emotional competence of children, and concrete supports in times of needs, that all those protective factors promote the optimal development of children and reduces child maltreatment. And whereas, in addition to supporting families, suspected abuse or maltreatment of a child should be referred to the Dutchess County Child Protective Services or to the statewide Central Register of Child Abuse and Maltreatment, the state's child abuse hotline, which is available 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. And whereas New York State and communities across their state join in recognizing April as Child Abuse Prevention Awareness Month, and all New Yorkers are encouraged to support families and promote the safety and security of children. And whereas each April we recommit ourselves to the safety of all children and to take the opportunity to acknowledge the dedicated parents, family members, professionals, and volunteers throughout our communities who work tirelessly to ensure that the next generation is supported in their development and protected from harm. Now therefore be it resolved that I, Mayor Lee Kyriakou, do hereby proclaim April as Child Abuse Prevention Awareness Month in the City of Beacon. Signed today. So let me have you both come up to the podium, let us know who you are, and I want to hand you this, and we'll probably do a photo op.
And while the mayor is doing that, just to note what the phone number is 1-800-342-3720. That's the child abuse prevention hotline that the mayor mentioned.
All right, so each of you tell us who you are, so people will know in the public.
Joe Shuka, the funeral director manager at Libby Funeral Home and the current president of the Exchange Club of Dutchess County.
Mark
Marco Angolia, Executive Director of the CPCA.
And Peter Foreman, retired county court judge, former city attorney, and Beacon resident.
Very good. So I just want to present you these proclamations. Oh, I've only got two. I was expecting the two of you. So let me hand this to you and this one as well. And Peter, if you want one, I can get you one as well.
good.
Thank you very much.
You would be, and I'll give this to you.
And this was the color of the pinwheels. So, and they're out in front of Libby. They blow really well in the wind, and it's a great way to reflect the awareness. So thank you.
Thank you, the City of
Thank you.
Beacon. Thank you, Mayor. Appreciate it.
Yep, you guys did a 5K run.
5K back in September.
You're going to be doing that again?
We will.
We hope to.
And we
Yeah.
have our 50th annual gala on May 30th as well.
Good. Just let us know, or we'll get it all posted.
Great.
Right. All right.
Thank you very much. Appreciate your kind words.
Yes.
Thank you, Mayor.
All right.
Thank you all very much.
Thank you.
Thank
Great to
you.
see you, Peter.
Yes.
As always. Okay. And we will get that posted on the city's website as well. And then we can go to a public hearing. Is that all right with the council? So let's go back to the agenda in the same order. The next item of business is a public hearing on a proposed local law concerning minimum parking requirements. We don't need a vote to open this. This was previously adjourned. And Nick, will you give us an intro to this so we can start the public comment?
Well, thank you, Mayor. So in your agenda packet is a cover memo from the village planner, as well as two versions of the local law, one of which was added tonight that had some minor changes. And it was added because it was updated to reflect changes to the parking chart, the new chart that had been discussed by the council at its last meeting. So both versions are included in the packet. I'm going to focus on the later version because that has the chart that is reflective of the discussions at the last meeting. And also, this is a public hearing that is going to be a continuation. The council will recall you have workshopped this local law on a number of occasions. It was also initially sent to the county for review and comment, who provided comments. It was reviewed by the planning board, and then most recently reviewed again by the planning board. They reviewed the most recent version that was posted in the agenda packet on Friday and provided comments that they were in favor of the revisions and appreciated the chart format. That as the introduction, let me try to focus the conversation. So most municipalities in New York State regulate off-street parking. It is regulated per use. So a hotel use, a funeral home use, residential use, mixed use, restaurants, et cetera, et cetera. And if you take a look at this local law, a lot of the changes are the removal of text and the insertion of a chart. And the purpose is to make it easier for applicants and the public and the boards to understand what the parking requirements are. That's one aspect of this local law. It is to make it a more readable local law. The other aspect is it is bringing the parking regulations current and updating them. They have not really been looked at in a number of years. One significant change is the removal of the 1964 exception that is relied upon by some developers. And the 1964 exception, in essence, states that if you're proposing a new use, so long as you're not increasing the use of a number of parking spaces by a certain percentage of what was permitted back in 1964, you are then deemed to be in compliance with parking. And so that would be eliminated. The law is also being modified to provide that when you don't satisfy your off-street parking requirements, meaning the spaces that must be provided off of a public street so that users, visitors, guests, or residents park off of the street and on the property, if you're not providing those spaces on the property, but you're providing it through an agreement to use someone else's property, maybe it's shared parking, maybe it's a separate parcel within 500 feet, that agreement needs to be either through an easement or other recorded document so that it remains in perpetuity and it's on notice to the public at large, and that way the space remains. We've made some other minor changes. For example, you now have the obligation that once landscaping is required as part of your site plan approval associated with parking, that if that landscaping dies, you have a continuing obligation to replace it. and that passes on to future owners. There's also language added with respect to green infrastructure, but the significant change is the chart that is added. And Ben, if you could put up page 7 of the most recent draft of the local law. And again, this is similar to the chart that was in the prior version posted with the agenda. It's just being updated to reflect the uses. You may recall there's a comment from the council about making sure that the column on the left-hand side regarding building use matches the schedule of uses. Zoning divides property into zoning districts, and then within those districts, you're allowed to do what are called uses, permitted uses, either through a special permit or permitted outright. And so the parking is now being made such that it fits on one page, and it's divided by uses. And you'll see in the left-hand column, it's broken into residential uses, lodging, commercial, and then there's a subset of commercial. It includes retail, office, service, food, auto-oriented, social, and community. Then a second category, a separate category of healthcare and educational, industrial, and then the catch-all of other uses. And if you take a look at the schedule of uses that tells you what you're permitted to use your property for in various zoning districts, these columns match that. And that was the change that was made to the local law and principle part. And then in the next columns on the right-hand side, we've divided into two separate columns with respect to a grouping of zoning districts. So the middle column is the CMS, the linkage, the WD, and the transition zoning districts, and then all the other districts are on the two columns on the right. So that middle column for the CMS and those other three districts provides that there is no minimum space required, but there is a maximum. And then as you see, residential is 1 dwelling space per unit, lodging 3/4 of the space per guest room, and so forth. And then in the other districts, the R1, the RD, and the general business, and the other districts listed, there is both a minimum amount of space that needs to be provided, as well as a maximum number of spaces that need to be provided. And these are guidance for the planning board. And Schedule D, or Section D on page 6 of the local law, sets forth that the planning board is vested with the discretion to determine the appropriate number of on-site parking spaces as part of the application review. And this chart provides that guidance to them. So in certain districts, there's no minimum, but there's a maximum. And in other districts, there's both a minimum and a maximum. And so this local law is designed to encourage use of other transportation alternatives, as well as make it easier for the public, the boards, and the applicants to understand how parking is treated within the city. Mayor, that's a rough overview of the local law, and Ben, we can then remove it from the screen. Thank you.
Great. The only thing I would add is that the chart makes it a lot easier to understand. I just note that there are 4 districts: the CMS, that's the Central Main Street District; the L, which is the Linkage District, that's the block on either side of Main Street; the Waterfront Development District, which is basically around the train station; and then the T, the Transition District, which is from Main Street down to the train station. Those are the only 4 that there would be no minimum, and there is a maximum. All of the other districts in the city represent probably, I would guess, 90+% of the land in the city of Beacon. Still has a minimum, if I read this chart correctly. I got that right, Nick?
That is correct, yes.
Okay. And with that, I would open up the public hearing, unless council members have any other questions before hearing public comment.
Just have a quick question about kind of a point of information. So there's a draft that was added today, and I believe our charter says that we have to have a local law up from starting on, I think, Friday in order to have a public hearing, right? The public deserves to have a few days of access to the law in order to respond to it. I know that it seems that the only change is the table, but I just wanted to check with Nick that we were okay to proceed with the public hearing, and maybe with a little reason why.
Sure, Dan, and I appreciate the comment. The rationale behind this was these were changes that were discussed, and because we would be talking, I wanted it to be clear as to the uses. I felt comfortable, and sorry I initially didn't keep the old one up. I asked Ben just to put the new one up, but it's appropriate to both up. The rationale behind it was We know that this has to go back to the county. We know that this public hearing is going to be continued, and I thought it would be beneficial to provide greater information, and I intended to explain what those differences were. So that was the thinking behind it. Not our typical practice, but I felt, given the discussion going on with parking, it was appropriate to have the version that was reflective of where the council, what the council had discussed at the last meeting, and where it was going with at least the discussion on this topic.
All right, thanks, Nick.
All right, and to clarify, your expectation is we would continue this hearing as we waited for the county to, county planning?
That is correct, yes.
Okay, great. All right, so with that, the first one on the list to sign up is Arthur Kemmons. And again, it's on the parking, and you got 3 minutes. Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. Arthur Kemmons, 39 Brumbaugh Avenue. This is an issue around which I've got to say I've got a considerable amount of ambivalence. And so I really appreciate the council's intent and effort to reduce automobile use and therefore reduce the pollution and global warming that it creates. And then earlier on in the discussion, there was some mention, although it doesn't, from what I saw, it doesn't appear in the law, an effort to increase housing affordability. And so my ambivalence is that those are good goals, but the assumptions on which this law is built seem to me to be wishful thinking, in that the alternatives to automobile use in Beacon, transportation to where people have to go shopping, to where people work, just don't exist to the extent that they need to in order to reduce automobile use. And I'm skeptical that somehow making it harder to park will change people's behavior when the behavior is driven by the availability of jobs close by and by access to public transportation. And so, good goal, but it seems to me that the result will be more inconvenience than a change in automobile use. If it's still intended that somehow this will increase the affordability of housing, I think that as well I'm more than skeptical about that. I just don't think that's going to happen, because the only way that would happen is if you passed some regulation that in exchange for reducing parking requirements, you were requiring affordability, and the terms of that were specified. Otherwise, all it will be is giving the developers a break so that they can build more apartments in the space without any obligation to do anything for the public. And I don't think that the trade-off of some payment in lieu of parking, I don't think that does anything significant in terms of the goals that this is intended to accomplish. I guess I just don't see this right now doing what it was intended to do. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Clark Gedman?
Clark Gedman, 2 Wilson Street. The gentleman who just spoke spoke very well for part of this issue, and the deferral of difficult decisions as to parking to a chart is incomplete as it appears, only turns the review process into a casino where the lucky get what they need and the unlucky suffer. The ambiguity of having housing be 1 to 3 sounds very justiciable. Oh, the average is 2. Why, of course. But to leave the spin of the wheel to deny a homeowner the readily available calculation on their 50 by 100-foot lot on how they squeeze the ADU in and treat it on an equal basis to the similarly situated resident is a lottery. You're deferring your decision-making authority to a process where the homeowner is left victim to pay the consultant, pay the attorney, increased fees, to then find out that, oh, I'm going to need 3 spaces rather than 2. Is there any mention of an AD unit on the chart? Is there any difference between an R1 with an AD and an R1 that isn't? I could go on, no surprise. But it comes back to the same theme. Take the powers of authority, make plain, publish decisions that the taxpayers can rely on before they have to spend thousands of dollars on a planner and a city attorney and a surveyor, only to find out that their lot's not big enough to accommodate that ADU. Where in the chart does that exist? Why do we pretend that it's adequate? Why are we paying $1,000 to put this garbage, excuse my language, Nick, in front of the council? It's so ambiguous that it defies all common sense and, in turn, denies your responsibility to the citizens and the property owners of this city for clear-cut privileges
Your time is
to
elapsed.
produce their right of property ownership without unlawful infringement.
Thank you very much. Julie Winterbottom?
Good evening. My name is Julie Winterbottom. I live in Ward 1, and I'm a member of Beacon Climate Action Now. And I would like to speak in favor of this proposed law to eliminate parking minimums. Despite what some may assume, it's not going to create a parking crisis in Beacon. It simply gets rid of outdated parking requirements for new development by bringing rules that were written decades ago when households were bigger than they are now, up to date and in line with current demographics. Second, it does not have to be a handout to developers and can indeed have an impact on affordable housing if you look at what's happened in some other cities that updated their parking requirements. In Minneapolis, rents did go down and residents saved an average of $1,700 a year over the rest of Minnesota after the city ended its parking minimums. In Buffalo, 60% of new housing was the result of ending parking minimums. I think that I don't have to explain why outcomes like these are desperately needed in Beacon. I think they could be made even more effective if down the road the city changed the percentage of affordable units that need to be included in developments. That would make it even more powerful. I urge the city to make this measure even more beneficial to residents and the environment by requiring that developers do pay a fee in lieu of parking to a fund that would be earmarked for improvements to our biking and pedestrian infrastructure, which would make it easier and more attractive for people to switch from driving to walking or biking. And finally, I want to amplify something that Beacon resident and clean transit expert Stephen Higasidi said in an interview in The Current. He pointed out that when we require more parking spaces than a development actually needs, we create a hostile landscape of empty, lifeless parking lots that makes walking unappealing and motivates people to stay in their cars. That means more traffic, more pollution, and none of the feeling of community and connection that comes from a vibrant, walkable streetscape. I also just want to mention that regarding Mr. Kamen's good comments, my impression is that this is going to unfold gradually over a long period of time, and during that time, I would love to see the council make sure that transit is improved, bike lanes are improved, pedestrian infrastructure is
15
improved, and that they beef up other requirements for affordable housing, so it works in tandem with this. Anyway, I urge you to pass this measure to help Beacon become greener, healthier, and potentially more affordable to live in. Thank you.
Thank you. Teresa?
Teresa Kraft, Ward 3. I am concerned about the parking minimums for new construction. Although you say that you will enforce maximums, I don't want to leave it to the developer to decide. We have a new planner that doesn't even live in our community and doesn't witness the daily struggles to find parking. The data is based on stories and studies from other communities and not on the facts of life in our city. It took me more than 20 minutes to find a parking space in Beacon on the east side of town on both Saturday and Sunday mornings. If I didn't have to carry 5 bags, I would walk too. If you want to see fewer cars and less pollution, then solving the existing parking problems should be the priority. Lowering the parking requirements per parcel based on what the builder feels will fit their needs will only make the problems worse. History tells us that people have driven more cars, fewer cars, smaller cars, and bigger cars. It's never going to be only flying cars and electric cars. If we don't fix what's already broken, we'll keep driving around and around, or perhaps just park in the wrong direction like they're doing on Main Street these days. I ask hundreds of people on weekends where they're staying, and they're all saying they're staying in an Airbnb. People will continue to subdivide their land, put up little sheds to rent out, and infringe on their neighborhood parking. This proposal to reduce minimums is questionable and shows more about the development's power and profits than Beacon citizens' concerns. Will this new local law be retroactive to new build projects and other development projects that are in the queue? There's a lot to be done besides passing this new local law. It's not ready.
Thank you. Anyone else in the public, physical public, want to speak on this? There's got 2 in the back. Take your pick. Sure. Tell us who you are, where you live, and you got 3 minutes.
Sorry, Rachel Rifkin, I think Ward 4.
2.
2, okay, thank you. I do believe in minimum requirements, parking requirements. I've been in the residential real estate world for over
Can you be closer to the mic? Yeah, that way people can hear you online.
I always have to do this, but yes. So bottom line is, I do believe in minimum parking requirements. I've been in the residential real estate industry for over 20 years. We have, and I think I've been overtaught, maybe good or bad, but we have ADA compliance stuff. We need minimums. I just believe in rules and regulations. That's it.
Okay.
And you do have to abide by that ADA code. And if you want to bring developers in here, let them pay, or if that's what you're trying to say. I understand the world is not right now. We're all in turmoil, but that shouldn't give them also a freelance to do whatever they want to do. That's it. So I believe in parking requirements, minimum. Max, that's a different story.
Okay.
Because you always have to start with the minimum, correct? Thank you, sir. Thank you to all of you. Thank you.
Okay. David? Sure.
All right, thank you. Good evening. My name is David Jensen. I live at 39 Spring Valley Street. As you know, I'm currently on the planning board and previously was on and was also the chairperson of the Zoning Board of Appeals. And so while I'm here speaking in my own capacity, obviously those experiences have a significant impact on what I'm about to say. I appreciate the council's attention to this matter, as well as that I can see various changes have been made in response to particular comments that have been made. There are basically 3 sets of issues I want to go over. Hopefully I can fit this into 3 minutes. The first big picture is the problem that we are actually, at least by my understanding, primarily looking to address here is parking on Main Street and in the central business district, and the ongoing fact that it is very often a case where there is no practical way for an applicant to provide parking. A big picture issue that I'm seeing jump off of here is that by extending these revisions to the entire rest of parking regulation, we're creating problems that probably were not intended. The first problem is that while this local law would eliminate the language about structures enacted before the zoning resolution in 1964, Section 223-26A requires compliance with the section's parking provisions, and there is nothing that provides an exception from the requirement for parking spaces for single-family and two-family residences that were built before 1964. So I think applied literally, anybody with a single-family residence who wants to put an addition on their house, if they don't already have at least one parking spot, is going to need to get a variance. I'm certain that wasn't the intention, but I can't find the language that gets to any other result. Again, if this proposal was just confined to Main Street and left the rest of our current existing state of regulation that has been on the books for 60 years in place, we wouldn't have this problem. The second big picture issue is that restricting the maximum number of parking spaces is, in all seriousness, a solution in search of a problem. At no point in time have I seen a development go through where I sat there and said, oh, gee, you know, we should be telling this applicant to build fewer parking spaces and a bigger building. The pressure is always going the other way. And there are some language issues that come up. I'm about out of time here. I'm going to hand you an excerpt from the ITE parking manual. It addresses just hotel use generally for general urban suburban uses, and the whole point of this is the maximum that has been set here is kind of disconnected from reality. I don't see the point of setting the maximum in the first place. And
you
at
want to
that,
hand that to us?
What's that?
You want to, your time expired, so if you want to hand us something, that'd be great.
Yeah, so what I had some more technical language issues. What I'll do is I will email them perhaps to you and to Nick.
Yeah,
that works? All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
Can you email me as well, please?
Yeah.
Oh, we'll just forward it to everyone, don't worry. Okay, anyone else in the physical public want to make a public comment? Come on up, Barry.
Perry Pendleton, 57 North Walnut Street. It was not too long ago, members of this council said Beacon doesn't have a parking problem. Really? And now we want to reduce it some more? You're crazy. Second of all, and I believe this is really not about parking. Do you think, and I believe, the city of Beacon has done enough for affordable housing in this community? Forrestal Heights, South Davies Terrace, Tompkins Terrace. We've done enough. And when I get to the part about really what I believe this is all about, there was an article late last year that was in the Highland Current about development. Oh yeah, development. A lot of people don't know this, but the county is looking to build on the property off Main Street, which means they're going to reduce their parking. Where's the public going to park to go to motor vehicle? When you build off the Wind Street in the back. Second of all, that article also stated about Forrestal Heights. Well, low-income people might not drive. That's the excuse they're using. This has nothing to do about parking and has all to do about more building. Enough is enough. We've done our share for affordable housing in this community for the elderly, for the handicapped, and for low-income people. Let them take it somewhere else and build it. Let it be Millbrook, East Fishkill, I don't care. But we've done our share, and enough is enough.
Thank you. Anyone else in the physical public? I think everyone here has spoken. Ben, anyone in the online public?
Yes, we have two hands raised. Firstly, we have Brian. Brian, you have permission to speak whenever you're ready.
Thanks so much. My name is Brian Mandel. I live in Ward 3 on Wilk Street. I'm a member of BCAN and also the Beacon Bicycle Coalition, and I am calling in to voice my support of the changes to the minimum parking requirements that the council is considering. It is vital that our city updates outdated urban policies and regulations that were made in a totally different era for a totally different set of circumstances. The way that people live and work and get around our community have vastly changed over the course of many decades. And these changes will have positive impacts in our community in terms of housing, climate, and livability. I also hope that this is a first of many steps in the city recognizing and incorporating other forms of transportation into all aspects of their planning. As long as we sort of say and have the mentality that you have to have a car to live here or it's difficult to get around without a car, we will always ensure that that remains true. In all aspects of our planning, we should be taking into account various ways that people move around our community and not give preference to one form over the other, especially one that is dangerous to human life and is environmentally ruinous. If we really want to be a diverse and welcoming community, which I think that we do, we actually need to implement policies that make it so. So in addition to reducing parking minimums across the city, I also hope that the city incorporates into this legislation payment in lieu of parking, which has a dedicated fund that would help fund bike lanes, sidewalks, public transit, and other infrastructures that support other ways of getting around besides automobiles. Thanks so much for your time, and have a good evening.
Thank you.
Our next speaker on Zoom is McCall. McCall, you have permission to speak whenever you're ready.
Thank you, Ben. Hi, everyone. I wrote an email where I voiced my opposition to this law as written. I agree with the speakers that said that we should strive for reduced automobile usage. I'm a very big fan of biking, and when I lived in New York City, I used to bike everywhere, even before they had the bike lanes. I don't bike as much here because it's very hilly, and while I support bike lanes, I don't see where we can add them on Main Street, or frankly, even on 52. Now, this is not the topic here. The topic is parking, but it's related because it's hard to get places in Beacon without a car for multiple reasons. And therefore, I think that we should give very careful thought to changing rules. If we want to experiment with something that pertains only to a very small area and put a time limit on it, that makes sense to me. But wide sweeping changes do not make sense. And it seems like there is a consensus here tonight. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Anyone else, Ben?
There are no further hands raised on Zoom.
Okay, I will, I believe, look for a motion to adjourn the public hearing.
Motion to adjourn the public hearing to May 6th. Is that our next?
May 20th, I think, so we have
May
time to-
20th, so I have extra time. I was going to ask that question. Okay, yeah. Motion to adjourn the public hearing till May 20th.
Second.
Okay, any further discussion before we do that? Yeah.
I have a clarifying question for you, Nick. I believe a couple of people have brought up the payment in lieu of issue, and I know it's not currently under consideration. I think you made a comment that you were still working on that with Natalie and are going to come back to us. Is that true?
That is correct, yes, and that's one of the reasons we want to adjourn this to the 20th, so we have time to workshop that concept with you and see if that gets incorporated into the final version of the local law to be drafted. It was just, we've been talking a lot about parking. This seemed like a good chunk of a local law to at least put forth for public comment, recognizing there were still other issues to be discussed.
Great, thank you.
You know, the comments before we adjourn it? yeah, I too feel like we'll just, wait until we get all the material and we can have the full discussion there. That's great. All in favor of adjourning this public hearing till May 20th, say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? All right, thank you. All right, so that takes care of the public hearing. Now let's do reports. Do you want to start at that end, Dan? Is that okay? Yep. Thank you. Someday I'll figure out how to start somewhere else, but it's easier to start at one end or the other.
I think surprising us, you've been surprising me for 4.5 years. It's fine.
Right. I know, I'm going to start it to my left or my right next time rather than the end. So I'm warning you now.
Okay.
So I just have 2 upcoming events that I want to share with the public. First of all, of course, my office hours are on Sunday, April 21st from 10 to 12 at Trax at 1 East Main. I would really love to hear your thoughts on this parking minimum, this parking law that we're discussing. So if you want to come by Trax and have a coffee with me and discuss it, I'd love to hear from you. I'd also like to start with, we also have an event coming up on May 2nd, a new electrification event. This one is going to be about your personal electrification plan. It's being supported by Rewiring America. It's May 2nd from 7 to 8:30 at the rec center in the gym. I plan on being at this one. It sounds like it's a really exciting event, and this is, I think, the 4th or 5th in this series, which is really fantastic. And also, I mean, I'm sure others are going to talk about this, but we just had City Council just had a tour of the fire department, of the new fire department across the street, and it is really exciting. It's one of the few all-electric firehouses in the country, but I think what's most notably is that it's one of the biggest public works projects in the history of Beacon. It is a really fantastic, well-constructed project that's running on time, and I think we should all be proud of that, and a lot of that credit goes to the city administrator, so thank you.
Good evening. Just wanted to remind everybody, especially as we have a gorgeous day, more pedestrians, during all days of the week out on Main Street, so be very cautious of that. And people with e-bikes, remember you are not allowed to ride on the sidewalks anywhere within the city. So be conscious of that because it is a danger to any bicycles, but especially e-bikes as they have more power. It is a danger to the pedestrians as you pass them. Also, thank you to the Public Works for filling in some potholes on Fishkill Avenue and throughout the city. And you can report potholes on the website, or that'll email the Public Works, if I'm not mistaken. And also, Chris, I'm going to be sending you just some pictures of the local grocery strip mall near my house of just some issues there with just glass on the road and some cars that are a concern. And anybody who has concerns in the area, feel free to reach out to my email, pweatherby@beaconny.gov, and I'll pass it off to Paloma.
Thank you. I'm going to be a little bit repetitive here and add my thanks to the tour of the new firehouse. I think, Dan, you said it well. This is a really exciting project, and thank you to everybody who's keeping it on time. And it looks like a really fantastic building. I'm excited to see it open. And I also plan to attend the May 2nd event on a personal electrification plan. I think this has been a really successful series of public information campaigns, and has even got us some points with the state towards our climate smart status, which was great. And thank you to those who came to my office hours this past weekend. It was a lovely day, and I always appreciate it when people stop by and tell me what they're thinking about. And also wanted to add that this coming weekend is Earth Day, and as every year, there's a citywide cleanup. There's more information on the city website about how to sign up for any of those cleanups. I'm personally out of town this weekend, but it's a wonderful event and a great way to meet some of your neighbors and help care for our city.
Great.
All right. I have two things that I wanted to mention. Both are on April 27th. The first one is maybe one of my favorite celebrations in Beacon, so I hope more people can come. It's the Arbor Day celebration. It's going to be on Saturday, the 27th this year. It's at 1 p.m. and the tree will be planted on the corner of Main and Willow, which is in front of M&T Bank. It's usually a very nice event that the tree committee puts on. You can throw a lump of dirt on the new tree and give it your best wishes, and it's honestly just a really nice thing. So I hope people show up. It's one of my favorites. There's also another event on the 27th with the Council. Hang on, I gotta look so I get this right. The Council on Addiction Prevention and Education is doing a drug take-back day. Again, that's the 27th from 10 a.m. to 2 p.m., and that is at the City of Beacon Recreation Center. So if you have things in your medicine cabinet that you would like to dispose of safely, you can bring them over there, and there will also be free Narcan training on site that day. And that is it from me. Thank you.
So glad you brought that up, that event about the drug take back and the Narcan training. I think that's incredibly important, and I'm so glad that they're coming to do that. And I think we should consider doing more of those events so people access that training, which is so essential. I'm sorry to have missed the firehouse tour today. I just unfortunately couldn't swing it relatively last minute. I want to say thanks to Chris and the city staff for the follow-up to the earthquake that we had. We didn't get a chance to comment on that, but there was a rapid and speedy response to let us know that infrastructure had been reviewed and ensured to be safe, so I very much appreciated that. Earthquakes do happen on the East Coast, but that was definitely something a little bit more exceptional than we're used to. I will also say that so you covered that. Earth Day you covered, so I won't go into that. I think it's great. But I do encourage people to sign up for the cleanups. I think it's a fantastic event. It's always been great with the follow-up celebration. I do have my office hours coming up on the end of the month, Saturday, April 27th from noon to 2 at the Beacon Recreation Center. That's the 20th, yeah, I know. Wait, did I get that correct? I think actually, I'll double check. I think I shared it with, I know I shared it with Ben. I think it's actually Sunday the 28th at, from 10 to 2, or excuse me, 12 to 2 going to do it at, I'm blanking on the coffee house where everyone goes to. This is a good way for it to be remembered. It is at Bank Square. Thank you so much. I was considering Big Mouth, but I decided to do it at Bank Square. So
There's
yes.
a lot of coffee houses now.
Yes. So it is April 28th, Sunday, noon to 2 p.m. at Bank Square Coffee House. To the public, please trust, for those folks who are commenting on interest in there being community-wide relationship-building conversations, I am continuing to research that and coordinate with my colleagues here to find the best way for us to do that, and sooner rather than later. So research is very active, and I welcome your input on strategies. So trust that that's happening, and please come to my office hours on the 28th of April, Sunday, from noon to 2 at Bank Square. Thank you.
Great. Yeah, so just to iterate what's already been said, thank you so much to our Fire Chief, Tom Lucchese, along with Jose Otero and Tom Chesser from the Palumbo Group for giving us a great tour across the street. One thing that hasn't been called out specifically, but Chris has mentioned several times also, is the environmental standards that this building is up to. We talked about the all-electric, and we got a very detailed tour of how the heat pump system is going to work as well, and the work they did into that. And it's just great to see all these best practices that hopefully will be down to residential buildings eventually, but at least now we're able to kind of live that out in practice here in Beacon. And I'll also say my office hours are going to be this coming Friday from 4 to 6 p.m. We're going to start in Poe Hill Park. There's a slight chance of rain. It'll be a little bit on the cool side, but we're going to start there. And if you don't see me there for whatever reason, I will be also in Bank Square Coffee House, but not the same day. So that's this coming Friday, April 19th. And as Dan said, if there are things about the parking minimums you have questions about or your own thoughts about, feel free to share anything else that's on your mind. And I will pass it to Lee, to you, or over to Chris. Which do you prefer?
Oh, I've got a couple of quick things.
Great.
And then I'll hand it to Chris. So thank you all. It's nice going last because I don't have to do a number of things because you cover them. That's great. I think you heard that on the weekend there was a a very brief event at the Libby Funeral Home. Joe Shuka, who chairs locally the Child Abuse Prevention Awareness Month, was there. Again, if you go past Libby Funeral Home, you'll see these really cool bright blue pinwheels, which I think is great. I had the opportunity to attend a Conservation Advisory Commission meeting. It was really great to see a good turnout and a lot of good discussion. I was very impressed. And I have some follow-ups to do with Faye in terms of helping provide some ideas on priorities. And then I also spent some time this weekend talking to our representative on the Hudson Highland Fjord Trail. They've got a committee reviewing data, and we're hoping that Beacon can be more of a positive force on the Fjord Trail than possibly some of the other communities have been to date. That's about all I've got. I'll stop there, and I'll give it to the city administrator.
I just wanted to let you know that next week we have Kathy Martin, our assessor, and Judd Siebert from Keenan Bean coming to do what is becoming our annual presentation before assessment letters come out, so they can explain the assessment process and why the value of one's home going up doesn't necessarily translate into that big of an increase. So they're coming next week because we've moved the meeting from the 29th to the 22nd. Right before you go to the Arbor Day event, you can also at noon come to this room where we're going to be doing an orientation for volunteers for the visitor center. We are trying to revamp having volunteers there, and we are working with Dutchess County Tourism, which is going to manage the program for us. So if anyone is interested in even finding out what that might be like, please come and see us on the 27th at noon. And with regard to the tree, I just wanted to report back that our test tree sale program was a great success. We sold more than 36 trees, which are going to be delivered next Friday and the following Monday. You'll see we're also at the same time getting our trees, so you're going to see new trees planted along Henry Street and in 5 of the 6 tree wells on Main Street that are empty. And the other one is we're working on. It's just a lot of root. But that's all I have. Thank you.
All right. So, unless I hear something from the city attorney, I'm going to go to local laws and resolutions. The first one.
Thank you.
You good? Okay.
Yeah, I'm good. Thank you.
Thank you. I appreciate it, Nick. So the first one is a resolution appointing Sandro Cabrera to the position of heavy motor equipment operator. Can I get a motion and a second?
Motion.
Second.
So that was Paloma and Molly. Chris, will you give us a little bit of detail on Sandro?
Sure. As we discussed last week, we have an open HMEO, heavy motor equipment operator position open in the water department. We have had Sandro Cabrera in our highway department since August of last year. He's been a great addition. This is a promotion that would help him to move up to HMEO. And we now we do skills tests for this, so he was tested on the equipment that he would need to use, and he excelled at that. So we'd like to promote him to HMEO and move him from highway to the water department.
Any other discussion? All right, so all in favor of appointing Sandro Cabrera to the position of heavy motor equipment operator, say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? All right, thank you. So the next one is a resolution authorizing the city administrator. This is to execute an agreement for the West Main Pump Station and Force Main project. Can I get a motion and a second? And you've got some good news to hear.
Motion.
Second.
So I'm going to do Molly and
Dan.
Amber.
Dan has it.
Dan? All right, Molly and Dan. I take my lead. So, Chris?
So this project is one that you've authorized in at least 2, if not 3, of the prior capital program budgets. It is a full replacement of the pump station that serves the northwest quadrant of the city, and also replacement of the forced main, which is the pipe that comes out of the pump station and goes to the sewer treatment plant. We did a series of bids we did a bid in February, and that just came back. We received 7 bids, which is a great response on this. And our low bid was from TAM Enterprises, Inc., in the amount of $3,046,520.40. That's significantly below both the engineer's estimate and our budget. So we had great response. We're starting to get much more competitive bids again, which, as you recall, was an issue coming out of COVID because everything was going sky high. So we would like to award the contract to TAM Enterprises. We're well acquainted with them. They're doing our primary settling tanks right now and have done other projects. So you have that engineer recommendation in your packet.
Great.
Any discussion, comments, questions?
Just that there's an extra "and" after the second, be it therefore resolved.
Thank you.
Otherwise, looks great.
Thanks, we'll update that.
On a more technical level, just curious, and, we've talked about inline electricity generation within pipes, and so, was that ever considered in terms of these projects? This one in particular, maybe, putting in a turbine that's force-fed within an inline system?
Well, you wouldn't do it on a force main. We're spending quite a bit of electricity, or diesel in this case, to pump. What this is where you have low-lying areas of the city, it comes by gravity to that pump station, and then you need to use a series of really heavy pumps to force that uphill. So if you put something in that would create more friction, you'd basically kind of net out or lose energy.
But on the receiving side, then that's not being part of the construction right now, that you said where it's being forced, by gravity fed into the system, that's not being affected by this project?
No, the gravity feed goes into the pump station. Again, you wouldn't put an inline, I don't know of any municipality that's put inline energy generation in sewer pipes. We have a hard enough time keeping sewer pipes open and clean and regulated, and again, I just don't think that's a practice. I've never heard of that being done.
I was just going to ask, there was such a noticeable difference in the bids that came in. Was there anything that was glaring of, the high of 5.5 million and what we're going with the 3? Yeah, I think TAM is able to give more competitive bids because they own all their own equipment. So we know that well, because whenever we need work down at the sewer treatment plant and it has specialized equipment, the owner, Tony, has bought that. And so the other firms probably are having to impute the cost of renting that equipment. They're also mobilized already. They're here now working on the primary settling tank. So I think that gave them, again, you have more than one project, they can come and work on that for a few hours and then send staff over to do the other work. So this was a larger spread than we saw with the next bid, but our engineer, you'll see a letter from TAM saying they stand by the price that they quoted.
Yeah.
It wasn't an error.
Sorry, one additional question. Do they know yet, or do you know yet when the work will begin, or is that still yet to be figured out?
It has to be negotiated out with the contractor and Metro North, because we're on their property.
Great, thank you.
Yeah. So typically what we'll do is we'll do a notice of intent to award the bid. They get their performance bond, their insurance, and then once we have everything back from them, we would issue a notice to proceed. We do a construction kickoff meeting, and that's where we start to set the schedule. Once we have that schedule, we'll keep the community apprised of any closings. They're going to have to keep the road open, so they're going to be flagging traffic. Yeah.
I think TAM knows this pretty well. I think that's a big help.
Yeah.
They have a really good sense of what they need to do when they're here, so I think we're fortunate. There's actually a couple of vendors that are like that. There's one for road projects that does, and sidewalk projects that wins quite frequently, and I think it's because they know us pretty well. So, because they got to come in as low bids, somehow they manage it. All right. Any other comments, questions on this one? All right, so all in favor of authorizing the city administrator to execute an agreement for the West Main Pump Station and Force Main project, say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Okay. And then the other one is the other one we heard about, that the bids are coming in. This is a resolution authorizing the city administrator to execute an agreement for the rehabilitation of Fishkill and Teller Avenues. Can I get a motion? and a second?
Motion.
Second.
So that was Amber and Dan. Chris, you want to tell us some more good news?
Yes. So we also put out to bid the rehabilitation of Fishkill and Teller Avenues, which is paid for 80% by federal funds, 15% by state, and then our 5%. We can use some of the program money that we get each year from DOT to cover. We had bid this last year, and it came in $6 million over budget. We revamped the project to truncate where the project would end on Fishkill Avenue. We took out the granite curbs and put in concrete curbs, which in itself saved $1 million. These bids came back. We had 4 bids. It was a very tight grouping, and the low bidder was GNFIA Corp. From Hawthorne in the amount of $6,994,967.81. This is about $60,000 less than the engineer's estimate. We do have available money, so once we get the contractor under contract, we'll be looking to do change orders to extend the sidewalk that we're able to do. So we're going to try to buy as much sidewalk on Fishkill Avenue as we can. And that will be a negotiation with the contractor. We have unit prices, but if you go over a certain amount of increase, then you have to negotiate further. So we're going to try to get as far as we can with the sidewalk, and we're exploring other options, which I'll talk to you when we do our capital program about the sewer and resurfacing of the rest of Fishkill Avenue. So this project ends near Blackburn and Hannah Lane, right at Memorial Park.
Any questions, comments?
No question, just, I know there's people at this table who've been on this for quite some time. I think we're all really excited to see this one get going. You know, these are one of the main arteries in the city here, and I know especially on Teller Avenue, it's very, very much needed and is on a school walking path and all of that. So just really excited about this, and so glad it's able to move forward with the potential to get a little bit more sidewalk done. So awesome news.
I think it was Dan or somebody who put in a request a while ago, whenever the timing is right, to have a public presentation about what the designs will be, just so the public is clear and aware about the changes that are coming. Maybe just a helpful PSA at some point to refresh on what the project is and what the changes will be.
I will do my best on that. I'm working with an engineer that I did not select.
Right.
And I'm just trying to get basic things done first.
Yeah.
If I can do that, I will try.
I think just one night, just to tell people what it is.
I mean, and basically, like, what is there is going to be rebuilt from the sidewalks are all going to be rebuilt that exist. They're going to be made 5 feet wide with new curbing. All of the storm drainage is going to be replaced. The road itself will be repaved at the end. Some of the infrastructure under the street is changed out. We'll be making improvements to the intersections at Teller and Wolcott, where George Washington is going to move a little bit to the north so that we can do a T intersection. Then we're going to upgrade the Teller Fishkill Avenue Main Street intersection for Plank. And then across from Memorial Park, there are going to be 2 speed tables with crosswalks on it to try to make that a safer corridor. So beyond that, I'll see if I can get the engineer at some point.
I mean, even if you just put that in a PowerPoint that we could point people to, I think that would be helpful for some folks.
I think, you know, we don't have to sell the project to the people, but I think they'd like to, you know, it's exciting, the work that we're doing, and I think sharing the details of it is good.
Okay.
Yeah, but just the details you provided as we're getting ready to start would be the right time to take everyone through it. You know, it'll be on public TV. Maybe we make a segment out of it as well that's separated out from this. You know, so I think that's a good idea. Okay.
Cool.
I have a question in the letter, something I haven't seen before, and when we've done one of these bids, is that it mentions our open case on file at OSHA. Can you talk a little bit more about that process and how it works specifically within city bids, and at what point it might be an issue that has to come back to us?
It really wouldn't be an issue. I'm not clear why they put that in, unless, if they had serious OSHA violations, they would be on the debarment list, and they're not on the debarment list. Okay. So, for instance, if somebody had chronic safety issues that weren't being addressed, they could end up on the state list saying they're precluded from being awarded public bids. Why our engineer needed to put that, I'm not quite clear. It's not determinative of being a responsible low bidder.
Great, thank you for clarifying that. And there's also that trailing and after the last, be it therefore.
Okay, thanks.
And a period instead of the semicolon.
Yes, and add a period instead of semicolon.
All right, Ben, you
All right.
got your marching orders here.
All right, so I'll bring this one to a vote. So all in favor of authorizing the city administrator to execute an agreement regarding the rehabilitation of Fishkill and Teller Avenues, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Anyone opposed? Okay.
And we'll
thank
keep
you.
people updated on traffic conditions too, as we know.
Okay. So the approval of the April 1st, 2024 minutes. Can I get a motion and a second?
Motion.
Second.
Molly and Pam. Anything to note, especially given that it's April 1st minutes?
I was deeply disappointed that everything is above board, as far as I can tell.
No April Fool's jokes to
No
be found.
April Fool's jokes for me.
All right.
It was a hard first quarter of the year, so we.
Yes.
I thought the most entertaining comment on April 1st was the Fjord Trail folks saying they were going to put in an escalator.
Yeah.
Breakneck. That was a good one.
I think you said that. That
Oh,
was
no,
your
they
joke.
did.
They had one.
They
Oh,
did.
did they?
I suggested they do an overpass over Cold Spring to just avoid the community entirely.
They're probably considering it.
And I'm sorry, Cold Spring. I apologize.
I don't.
All in favor of the minutes of April 1st, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Anyone opposed? So just to announce that the next meeting will not be April 22nd. No, it will be April 22nd.
No, it will be, and it was
sorry.
originally on our
Yeah.
schedule the 29th.
So ordinarily, if there's the fourth Monday of a 5-Monday month is a week off, but instead of doing it on the 29th, we will be doing it on the 22nd, given various attendance of council members and myself. So that's the next meeting will be Monday, the 22nd. It's a workshop. Next Monday at 7. Okay, and then this is the second opportunity for public comment. If you did not speak at the first one, you may do so now. Seeing no one in the physical public who has not spoken previously, would anyone like to speak online?
I think actually Rachel spoke at the public
Ah.
hearing, but does have the option of
So
speaking here if she wanted to.
You're right. So if anyone didn't speak at the first opportunity for public comment and the physical audience would like to speak now, you certainly can. And speaking about parking doesn't count as your public open general comment. Okay, so hearing none now. Ben, anyone online?
Yes, Mayor, we do have one hand raised online, and that is McCall. McCall, you have permission to speak whenever you're ready.
Okay.
Thank you, Ben. Thanks, everyone. I wanted to thank Chris White for the tree program that I think he mentioned last meeting. And I know that I told a few neighbors about it and they took advantage of it and they're very excited about it. I wanted to thank Pam for the cleaning of Route 52, which is an ongoing issue. I live in Pam's neighborhood. I wanted to thank Jeff for speaking about the community building. It's definitely something that is still sorely needed as The community is still reeling from the issues that happened earlier this year and are still ongoing. I had a procedural question about adding things last minute. I noticed that it happened today and it was raised by Dan, and thank you for raising that. It also happened in the past with some important decisions, and procedurally, I just want to understand until what time can things be added to the agenda? Because recently I sent an email at 4 p.m. to the planning board, and I was told that it will not be part of the record because that gets locked down at 4 p.m. So if that could be clarified, that would be great. I also remember that a few meetings ago, Pam asked for clarification about the workshop, like in a workshop, on the role of the council members, and I was wondering if that is going to be scheduled soon, because I think it's pretty important for the council to be clear on its role. And finally, there is a library vote on April 25th, on Thursday, so please vote. Thanks, everyone.
Great, thank you. Is that anyone else, Ben?
Oh, further speakers on Zoom?
Okay. I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
Motion?
Second.
Dan and Pam, all in favor, say aye.
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 Anyone opposed?
Thank you, Nick.
Thank you all.
Okay,
and,
good night, everyone.
Have a good night.
Good night.
Thanks, Nick.
Night, Nick.
Really?